All right, we are joined by one of my favorites, Brett McMurphy. He writes for the actionnetwork.com. Had a great article today about realignment. Won't give any spoilers away. Should definitely go read it. Actionnetwork.com. Brett, thanks for joining us. We'll jump right in here. First of all, how important is it for Liberty to join a conference this round of realignment? And second part of that question is independent going to be sustainable with BYU leaving independent and the scheduling alliances and things like that. So how important is it for the Liberty to get in a conference this go around, and is being an independent going to be sustainable?
I guess that there's not a right or wrong answer to that. I think it depends on what Ian McCaw and the leaders at Liberty want to do going forward. I don't know if they have a strong preference to remain an independent. I don't know if they would prefer to be in a conference. I know some of the challenges that BYU has had as an independent, because when you're an independent and you're not named Notre Dame, it's very difficult. And obviously scheduling is the biggest component of that. BYU's a different situation than Liberty, and that they have a ESPN TV deal, specifically for BYU. Liberty does not have that. Look, if I'm sure Liberty would prefer to be in a conference. I think the best news that came out of Friday was that the Mountain West is staying intact, because what that means now is if the Mountain West would have lost any combination of Boise, San Diego State, Colorado State, or Air Force to the American, then basically you would have seen little movement as far as Conference USA and the Sun Belt, as far as the resulting dominoes. However, with all those schools staying in the Mountain West, the American has to find some teams from somewhere. They're left with 8 schools after Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF leave. You cannot have an 8-team conference. You would have to find 5 non-conference games. That's not realistic, especially in today's atmosphere as far as conferences, having anywhere from 10 to 14 members. So the fact that the Mountain West stays intact is tremendous news for Liberty. Now, that doesn't guarantee they're going to have an invitation, but certainly I would say their odds have increased, because now the American is going to have to go somewhere to find their replacements. Sources have told me that UAB is likely going to be that top choice for the American. So now Conference USA needs somebody. Well, the American's not going to just add 1 team. They're going to add 2. They could even add 4. So pick any schools out there that you want from Conference USA or the Sun Belt, because that's where they're getting their replacements from. There's nowhere else to get them from. They're not getting them from the Mountain West. They're not getting them from the MAC. So then when the Conference USA and or the Sun Belt lose anywhere from 2 to 4 members, now they have to go find somebody to pull up from the ranks, if you will, to fill those spots. That's where I think Liberty will have its best shot. Will it be in Conference USA? Will it be in the Sun Belt? Does Liberty have a preference between those 2 conferences? I can't answer that. But I do know that it's a great situation for Liberty. Again, if they want to join a conference, you're close with the school. Maybe you can answer that for me. But if they do want to join a conference, I think today's news couldn't have gone any better for Liberty.
Yeah, Ian's obviously playing the cards close to his vest right now, and what we're hearing is, it's AAC or remain independent is kind of the feeling we all have. Is the AAC even an opportunity? And so with G5 conferences, the 3 you mentioned just now, the Sun Belt, Conference USA, and the AAC, what are they looking for as the main factors to adding a conference? Is it still market size, like being in a big city? Are they looking at recent football success? Are they looking at the amount of money you're spending? What are you hearing as some of those top factors for adding a school to your conference? What are some of those presidents and conference commissioners looking for?
Basically everything that you just laid out, that and more. I mean, it used to be that when conferences would expand and when it's, when it wasn't so many dominoes in play and they had more time to think about it, they would consider academics, surprisingly. They would look at market size, football success, a lot of things you mentioned. But now these conferences are basically just looking to survive. The Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma. They're looking to survive. So they went out and got what they thought were the best 4 football programs they could get. It also helped that they're in decent markets. BYU's got a quasi-national following. Those are bonuses. There's a reason why the Big 12 didn't look at, say, USF. USF's in Tampa. Look, I live in Tampa. But, they're 2-20 their last 22 games or whatever it is. That is not an attractive expansion candidate. So I think what these other leagues are going to be looking at, I think first and foremost is football success. And then they can kind of spin all the other factors into making sense to bring on those schools. I certainly think Liberty's in a good position because of the success they've had. I will say that I know from talking to sources at different conferences, one of the concerns about Liberty is Hugh Freeze. And that's actually a compliment. But the way they look at it is everyone knows what Liberty has been able to do with Hugh Freeze. No one envisions Hugh Freeze ending his career with Liberty. So when Hugh Freeze leaves Liberty, is there going to be a substantial drop in the football program? Look, I'm not saying there's going to be. I'm not saying there's not going to be. I'm just, don't shoot the messenger. That's what I'm being told, where some of these other conferences have questions about the long-term stability of Liberty when and if Hugh Freeze leaves. Why I did mention Liberty as far as being tied in with any AAC expansion, I think they're looking at more established programs like a UAB, which, look, it's not UAB had to, had the program disbanded and they had to start it over again. So it's not like they've been around forever, but I think that's kind of what they're looking for. It doesn't mean Liberty's out of the mix. I just don't think they're at the top of their wish list. But look, anything can happen. Certainly, I don't think there's going to be any decisions made in the next couple of weeks or even the next couple of months. Now that I say that, while we're recording this, there may be an announcement. Conference USA is adding somebody or the Sun Belt or whatever. Why I'm saying that is, look, Liberty lost to Syracuse, but if they can if they can win the games they're supposed to, obviously the game at Ole Miss is the big game everyone's looked forward to this year. As far as Liberty, if they win that game, their profile increases tenfold. Is it going to mean guarantee they're going to get into another conference? Absolutely not. But it certainly helps their chances. So it's hard to sit here and say that, Conference X, Conference Y is specifically looking at these 3 factors. But certainly, the example I gave as far as USF, if Liberty had USF success right now, I wouldn't even be on your podcast because Liberty would have, if any Animal House fans out there, I'm dating myself, John Blutarski's grade point average, 0.0% chance of getting in a conference. But because they have been successful, they run a very exciting type of offense, score a lot of points, all those things that attract eyeballs for TV viewers. I think Liberty's got a decent shot. And again, reverting back to what we opened up with, what happened what happened Friday could not have been laid out any more perfect for Liberty as far as increasing their chances.
Yeah, no, that's you bring up a lot of good points. You actually answered all the rest of my questions there. I'm out. I do have one more here, but first I want to mention that's a great take on Hugh Freeze. I mean, we're brand new, not just anything before Freeze. We really weren't FBS, or maybe 1 year without him, so we don't even know what we're doing in FBS without Hugh Freeze. So yeah, a great point. But I will say this for those of us inside the Liberty community. we have this saying and hashtag we use a lot. It's called "In Ian We Trust," and we feel like as long as we have Ian McCall guiding the ship, that guy seems to be pulling all the right strings, and I have full confidence that he could bring in a coach, maybe not a Hugh Freeze, but somebody to keep the success going. So, I guess you
Yeah,
mentioned,
I mean, I agree. I agree. I mean, I'm not saying, look, I'm not
yeah,
saying you guys are going to fall off a cliff. I'm just saying the people that are making these decisions are wondering,
right,
okay, what happens when Hugh Freeze is gone? Because again, the time, how this timeline would work, you know, in hypothetically, Liberty would get the invitation while Hugh was still the coach. They may not join the league until after Hugh is gone. And so, a conference would be taking a gamble on that. Again, it's not saying, Liberty's fallen off a cliff. It's not saying Liberty won't be a better program. That's just a concern that these conferences have specifically about Liberty.
yeah, yeah. You've mentioned a couple of strengths and a couple of weaknesses there for Liberty and Realign. I guess that was kind of my question: is are there any other weaknesses? Something we're kind of concerned about is, we do have somewhat of a checkered past here recently with changing presidents and that kind of thing. Is that even are there any political type of you know animosity per se amongst the conferences, or is that so far down the list that we shouldn't be worried about that kind of thing? Or are they really looking at football success, money, all market size, all of that type of thing way before any of that type of stuff? I guess I just want to know what the perspective is outside of the Liberty community on that type of thing with our university, specifically how it applies to realignment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't tell you what these people are thinking about that, but I do know, yeah, that could be a concern for some presidents. Other presidents, it may not be. I kind of the comparison I would make it is if you're recruiting an incredible 5-star athlete who has some maybe baggage, for lack of a better term, to go along with them. Well, the more talented he is, the more baggage you're willing to take on. And look, I'm not saying Liberty has baggage. Maybe this is a bad analogy, but hopefully you can see where I'm going. So the better Liberty is on the field, I think any concerns about what's happened at the university in the past and those sort of things can be kind of pushed to the side. If Liberty is a 500 program, then it's kind of like, well, okay, well, there's these other factors. Do we really want to go this direction? I mean, I'll be very honest with you. BYU, you know, had tried to get into the Big 12. They obviously would have accepted a Pac-12 invitation at any point. They had no shot. They wouldn't play on. They still won't play on Sundays. That's not going to change. They've had some issues with their school with, the LBGT, community and different things like that presidents don't want to deal with. Well, what happened? The Big 12 got, for lack of a better term, they got desperate. They needed the 4 best programs they could get in their conference. And all of these so-called issues they had with BYU in the past, suddenly they found a way to work those things out, or they weren't as big an issue because BYU, I was told was the number one choice of the 4 that they added. They were the number one target. So again, you guys are not apples to apples with BYU, but hopefully, even though it's a bad analogy, maybe I kind of shed some light on that into how these presidents will look at it. And look, I can't speak for these presidents. One president may say, "Hey, we love Liberty. Let's bring him on." You may have another president that say, "No way. There's absolutely no way we're touching these guys." Ultimately, it's going to come down to what the commissioner of the league wants to do and how much influence he has over these presidents and how badly they want the school, and or if they can't take Liberty, what's their next best option? Again, I'm sorry to keep bringing up USF, but if Liberty is the top option and then their next best option is USF, then I think they're probably going to make a strong play to get Liberty because they look at the huge disparity in the success of the 2 programs. So I rambled on there a bit. Hopefully that made sense. But bottom line is, it's impossible to call. But again, going back to square one, the more success Liberty has on the field, the more attractive they're going to be overall to these leagues.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and actually, it makes me feel a little bit better hearing that. We've always kind of, using the BYU example is a good one, even though, like it's not apples to apples. It does kind of apply to our situation. Last question here, and we'll let you go. Is have you heard anything about teams working together, schools working together, and saying, okay, if you take us, you got to take our buddies? That's the first part of the question. The second is we're kind of hearing about a mid-Atlantic type of regional-based brand new conference. I've kind of heard that ODU and Liberty and a few others have kind of spun that idea up. If I'm not saying it's our top option, but I would say if we got left out of a conference, that we would kind of spin that up a little bit more. So have you heard about any teams or schools partnering up? And then also, have you heard anything about this new regional-based conference that ODU and Liberty might be spearheading?
No, I have not. I would say, without having any inside information on that, I think the biggest challenge for a start of a new conference is your TV deal. Where are you going to get your TV money from? ESPN is already tied in with the Sun Belt. They've very small ownership with Conference USA. They are pretty heavily involved with the American. They're really going to be deep with the SEC. So I don't know how realistic that is. I'm not saying, look, anything can happen, especially in today's college landscape. I would just say that would be challenging for schools to start up a new conference, because where are you going to get your media rights from? And I'm not saying ESPN, you have to have ESPN or you can't survive. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, all of these current 10 FBS conferences already have media rights deals, some more lucrative than others. So now if you're starting an 11th conference, one, you're not affiliated with the college football playoff. You would have to get that resolved. You wouldn't get any, I don't know if you would get money from the college football playoff. Like every school or conference gets money from the college football playoff just by whether you go 0-12 or 12-0. So would you be included in that? Would you kind of be viewed as an independent? I'm not sure if that would work or not. As far as any schools that are like, okay, if we're only moving from Conference A to Conference B as a package deal. I have not heard anything as far as the Conference USA or the Sun Belt level. I do know that BYU and San Diego State were kind of tied together, as far as what their decision was going to be as far as joining the American. They decided no, they were not going to do it, that they're going to hold out hope that they can get into a Power 5 somewhere down the road. So so sorry, I don't really have much on that. It would be a challenge. It's not to say it couldn't happen. I just think that may be the least likely scenario to happen. And then I have heard that maybe there's some possibility of Conference USA and the Sun Belt maybe joining forces. I don't know. You'd have what, 20 something teams.
Yeah.
I lost count.
Yeah.
Again, your TV money's only going to be so big, and the way I explain it is, it's like a pie. So you got this pie. So now, if you add the two conferences together, the pie is going to grow a little bit. It's going to get bigger. But now, instead of having 10 mouths to feed or 14 mouths to feed, you got to cut that pie into 24 pieces. Well, those each slice of that pie is going to be smaller in a 24-team league than in a 10-team league or 14-team league. So that would be the biggest challenge if the leagues merged. And also, keep in mind, the recommended college football playoff expansion is to allow automatic bids to the top 6 conference champions moving forward. Well, if you guys combine conferences, then that means your conference is limited to one conference champion. Whereas without a merger, the Sun Belt Conference champ would have a shot, and Conference USA champ would have a shot. But now if you merge together in some kind of, monster 20-something team league conference, then you're basically taking away one conference champion, one less opportunity to get into the college football playoff, 12-team playoff, if that's what we ended up in.
Yeah. Brett, you're the best, man. We love following along. You always got the scoop, but you do such a good job for the Action Network, and I think everybody that listens and follows us, they know where to find your stuff too, and we really appreciate it. I did one comment. I think you wrote it this way in your article today on purpose, but it's got me intrigued. Everybody's claiming that they're going to be the top, basically non P5 conference
Oh,
going
right.
forward.
Yeah.
So what is your best guess? Who is going to be the top non P5 after this all settles? Is the AAC going to hold the crown, or Sunbelt going to be aggressive like you're at and try to take that crown from them? I mean, when the
I
dust
guess, well,
settles?
here's the thing. Anyone can say they're the top team, top conference. And I guess it depends on your definition of who's the top conference. Because there were, as far as every conference, there were a couple of years where the SEC was actually not very good from top to bottom. But you know what? Nobody remembers that. Why is that? Because Alabama won the national title, and that's all everyone remembers. So, look, last year, the Sun Belt, they had ended up with 2 teams in the top 15 of the final AP poll. They were the only Group 5 league to do that. But you know what? The American could say, well, we were the top conference because we had we had more success. We got to the New Year's Six bowl game, and the Sun Belt didn't. So, look, I think no matter, I think with the Mountain West staying put and the losses that the Americans suffered, I think that the Mountain West would appear to have the best shot on paper to emerge as the top non-power conference, but I don't think that's automatic every year. And look, if the Sun Belt can keep Coastal and App State and they keep playing at their level, and Louisiana, we talk about losing coaches, how are they going to drop? If Billy Napier ever leaves Louisiana, or the Raging Cage is going to drop down. So it could be the Sun Belt. If the Sun Belt stays put and is able to add like a Liberty, and Hughes stays around for a couple more years, I think the Sun Belt could make a run also. I think it's going to be challenging enough for the American, because no matter who they add are not going to fill the void of Cincinnati and UCF. Maybe Houston, they struggled a little bit, but I don't think there's anybody out there that will be able to compare quality-wise as far as the AAC is concerned, having to replace Cincinnati and UCF. So I know I was squarely on the fence with that, but it's just like these conferences spin it. I mean, Keith Gill put out a statement a couple of weeks ago and said we're the best non-power conference, and then the Mountain West took their subtle shot at the American today and said we're the best non-power conference. And I do know one thing: I think we won't have to hear this Power 6 nonsense anymore.
Yeah, you're right about that. Look, let's catch up about this stuff in about a month and a half, and I really appreciate your time, and so gracious with us, and hopefully, Liberty wants to land in a conference. I know the fan base, we want to land somewhere where we have conference championships, more meaningful games, and all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully, we'll see how it goes. It's been great, and we'll catch up down the road. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.